It was supposed to be a perfect night, the kind of anniversary evening people remember for the rest of their lives. 5 years together. 5 years of routines, late-night talks, fights they survived, dreams they built. He had replayed this moment in his head so many times that it already felt real. The soft music, the quiet restaurant, the box in his pocket that felt heavier with every step. By the time they got home, his hands were shaking, not from doubt, but from excitement. He knew she was the one. He had known it for years. So he did it the way he always imagined. He dropped to one knee, looked up at her, and asked the question he thought would lead to the rest of their lives. But what happened next didn't fit into any version of the future he'd imagined. She froze. Her expression didn't shift into joy or surprise. Instead, it tightened, almost in pain. And then she said no. Not softly, not gently, but with a kind of urgency, as if the word had been waiting on her tongue for days. For a moment, neither of them moved. He stayed kneeling on the floor while the world he'd built in his mind collapsed in absolute silence. She whispered, "I can't, not like this," and turned away before he could say a word. She grabbed her keys, avoided eye contact, and walked out the door. No explanation, no reassurance. Just the sound of the lock clicking behind her. She texted a few minutes later, "I'm staying at a friend's tonight. We need to talk after we calm down." That was it. He sat alone in their living room, the place where they'd laughed, argued, cooked cheap dinners, and made up after long nights. And suddenly it felt unfamiliar. He stared at the unopened ring box on the coffee table, the one that only an hour ago symbolized hope. Now it felt like proof that he had completely misread the moment. Misread her. Misread them. Sleep never came. Morning did. He couldn't go to work, couldn't face co-workers who had been excited for him, who had told him, "She's going to say yes, man, no doubt." The thought of their sympathy or shock felt unbearable. So he called in sick and stayed home, still replaying the moment in loops, trying to understand how 5 years of love could break so suddenly. In a single, silent second between a question and a refusal. The morning after felt like living inside a hangover, except he hadn't touched a drop of alcohol. Just pure emotional dehydration. While staring at the ceiling, he remembered the real beginning of this disaster. Not last night's proposal, but the moment he said the words that every partner secretly fears. "I accepted a job in California." He said it casually, like he was announcing they were out of milk. Meanwhile, this job offer wasn't milk-level news. It was life-changing, relationship-shifting, pack your entire existence into 2 suitcases news. The funny part? He honestly thought she'd say, "Oh wow, babe, California? Sure, I'll just abandon my carefully planned medical career trajectory I've worked my entire 20s for. Let me grab my flip-flops." Yeah. No. She did smile when he told her, which he mistook for approval, but in hindsight, it was more of a, "I'm processing this betrayal in real time but trying not to cry in public" smile. He assumed, confidently, boldly, stupidly, that she could work anywhere. Because, doctors are like Starbucks. Every city has them, right? Meanwhile, she had 2 prestigious offers on the East Coast, Boston and New York, places where people brag about paying $4,000 for a closet they call an apartment. They had agreed, months earlier, that this was the plan. East Coast, stable jobs, building something together. But when nothing came up for him and this California dream job landed in his lap, he grabbed it without thinking. Not about logistics, not about timing, not about her. Honestly, the man saw the salary number and his brain just blue screened. 3 times his current pay, California sunshine, a job title that sounded impressive enough to make him feel less insecure next to the surgeon husbands at her work dinners. He was sold. He thought she'd be thrilled. She thought he'd forgotten she existed. Now, replaying that conversation in his head, he could practically see the exact moment her soul left her body. And the worst part? He didn't fully get why she was so upset until last night, when she basically said, "You didn't just move across the country, you moved out of our shared life plan." He sighed, rubbed his face, and realized something horrifying. The failed proposal might not have been about the proposal at all. It might have been about everything leading up to it. But hey, At least he wasn't fired from work. Yet. He just had to eventually go in and explain why his big romantic moment turned into a full emotional house fire. And that conversation might actually be worse than the breakup he's trying to avoid. By early afternoon, the apartment felt unbearably quiet. The kind of quiet that echoes. Every sound became too loud. The hum of the fridge, the soft ticking of the clock, even his own breath. He kept pacing the living room, trying to untangle the last 2 years of their relationship, the part neither of them liked to touch, the part with bruises that never fully healed. They had survived a lot, more than most couples their age ever face. The miscarriage, the grief that arrived like a storm and never fully left. Her residency, those brutal night shifts, the hollow-eyed mornings, the moments she came home so exhausted she didn't even take off her shoes before collapsing on the couch. He remembered sitting beside her, covering her with a blanket, whispering, "You're home," even though she was too tired to hear him. But he also remembered the loneliness, the empty dinners, the celebrations postponed or forgotten, the feeling of watching the woman he loved slowly disappear into a hospital that demanded everything she had, and more. He hated himself for it, but part of him had always wondered if her exhaustion had played a role in losing the pregnancy. He never said it out loud, not once, not even during therapy. That thought lived inside him like a guilty secret, locked behind every unsaid sentence. And because he carried it silently, he carried something else too. The belief that he wasn't enough for her. Not smart enough, not accomplished enough, not doctor world enough. At her work events, he always felt like a misplaced background character, standing next to world-class surgeons while he talked about sports marketing. They asked questions he barely understood. They made jokes he couldn't follow. She never cared about any of that. She loved him just as he was. But insecurity is a parasite. It feeds on silence. He never told her how small he felt. She never told him how alone she felt carrying the weight of their future on her shoulders. And here they were now. Two people who loved each other fiercely, but had built their relationship on layers of unspoken pain. Her refusal last night suddenly made sense in a way that terrified him. She didn't reject the ring. She rejected everything that had been left unsaid. The job, the distance, the decisions he made alone, and the ghosts between them that neither had dared to confront. His chest tightened, his hands trembled. For the first time since last night, he understood why she walked away. And for the first time, he was afraid she might not walk back. By evening, the shadows in the apartment had grown long, stretching across the floor like they were trying to swallow the place whole. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't showered. He had barely moved. The ring box sat on the table like a piece of evidence from a crime scene, and he was starting to feel like the suspect. Every hour without her felt heavier. Every minute without a message felt like another thread snapping. Finally, his phone buzzed. Not a call, not a long apology, just a simple message. "We'll talk tomorrow." 2 words that held the terrifying possibility that there might be no future to talk about. He sank onto the couch, the same couch where they had once planned their life together, scrolling through Zillow listings on the East Coast, daydreaming about hardwood floors and a small balcony with room for exactly 2 chairs. Now it felt like a museum of predictions that would never come true. He replayed last night in slow motion. Not the rejection. He'd already tortured himself with that scene 100 times. But what came before it? He had noticed she was quiet all week after he told her about the California job. But he mistook her silence for acceptance. Or worse, indifference. He didn't see the signs. He didn't see her. When she finally spoke last night, before he went down on one knee, her voice had trembled in a way he dismissed as stress. But now he remembered every word perfectly. "I just don't know how we're supposed to make decisions together if we're living 2 different futures." At the time, he smiled, kissed her hand, told her not to worry. He didn't realize she was giving him a warning, a last desperate signal, one he ignored. And when he proposed, when he offered commitment without offering partnership, she broke. Not because she didn't love him, but because she loved him too much to lie. No wasn't a rejection of him. It was a rejection of a future built on uneven ground. But understanding that didn't make the pain any easier. He pressed his palms to his eyes, trying to stop the sting, but it didn't help. Grief has a way of finding the cracks. He wanted to call her. He wanted to drive to her friend's place, beg her to talk, beg her to stay, promise he'd undo every mistake. But he also knew, for the first time, that rushing would only break them further. He had one night left before the conversation that could save their relationship, or end it. And as he looked around the apartment, their home, now painfully empty, one terrifying thought settled in his chest like ice. What if that proposal wasn't the worst moment of his life? What if the worst moment was still coming? The next morning, he woke before the alarm. Not because he'd slept, but because he simply couldn't lie down any longer. He paced until he heard the soft, familiar sound of her key turning in the lock. His heart stuttered. She stepped inside quietly, still wearing the clothes from the night before. Her eyes were swollen, maybe from crying, maybe from not sleeping at all. She looked at him like someone preparing to walk barefoot across broken glass. He opened his mouth to speak, but she raised a hand. "Let me go first." He nodded, throat tight. She sat down at the table, right beside the unopened ring box. She didn't touch it. "I love you," she began. Her voice cracked on the first word, and that alone nearly broke him. "I love you more than I've loved anyone. But love isn't enough right now." He felt a cold pressure build in his chest. She took a breath, steadying herself. "When you accepted that job without telling me, it wasn't just a job, it was a message." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "You chose a future that didn't include me before you even asked if I wanted to come." He swallowed hard, wanting to protest. But what argument could undo what she felt? "And when you proposed last night?" She looked at the ring box, then looked away again. "It made everything worse. Because you didn't ask me to build a life with you. You asked me to trust a life you'd already built alone." He squeezed the edge of the table. "I can fix this. I'll turn down the job, She shook her head immediately. "That's the problem. I don't want you to fix this out of panic, or fear, or guilt. I don't want you to give up your dream job because you're scared of losing me." Her voice was firm now, heartbreak carved into certainty. "I want someone who chooses a life with me the first time, not as a correction." Silence settled between them, thick, suffocating. He whispered, "So, is that a no?" She exhaled, and for a moment he hoped she might soften, might change her mind, might reach for the ring. Instead, she reached for his hand. And then came the words that felt both like a wound and a release. "It's a no. For now." His eyes widened. She continued, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm not ending this because I don't love you. I'm saying no because we need to rebuild trust before we talk about forever. I can't marry you today, but I'm not walking away from you either. Not unless you walk away from us." The world tilted. Not the final goodbye he'd feared. Not the yes he'd prayed for. Something in between. Something painful. Something real. He nodded slowly, breath shaking. "So, we're still together?" She smiled, small, fragile, but real. "We're together, but we have work to do. Both of us." And then, in the softest voice, "Ask me again someday, when our lives point in the same direction." He closed the ring box gently, not as a failure, but as a promise waiting for its moment. A no, today. But not forever. Just a pause, between who they were and who they still might become.